Alright, so we're getting close to the end of the Dreadnought event, and I haven't made any video overview of this mech yet, which I do apologize for. Admittedly, I have not really recorded anything in the past month. I've just been editing, working on stuff that I'd already had for a while. So yeah, as of the time of this being uploaded, there's only 2 days left of the Dreadnought event. Most people who would be willing to get it probably already have by now. So I don't want to go too much in depth into the actual review of the mech, what are my thoughts on it or whatever. I'll just simplify it and just say right now, I think it's pretty fun. It has a really cool ability mechanic, but it's not particularly good. 2 seconds of EMP can be nice against bots or something, but realistically against players you're not going to be doing a whole lot of work with it. Even still, it is better than some of the other ones that they've put out somewhat recently. I would say it is probably better than Salvor overall. I mean, if you're playing with a team, then Salvor is obviously useful, but it's definitely better than Mimicker, but Mimicker's, kind of a while back. It's decent, and I do enjoy it a bit, but the focus of this video is going to be on the best weapons to use on this mech if you already have it. Or maybe you can use whatever clips I show during this video to determine whether or not you think it's actually a fun mech and something that you want to get. I don't know. So before we get into the top 5, I do have a few honorable mentions. I'm a bit undecided as to which ones I actually think are better or worse. So I have 3 honorable mentions here. The first one being Nade Launcher. Decent damage output. It kind of goes up and over, same as the ability does. Quick reload time. AoE, it's able to hit whatever. I mean, it's pretty solid. It fits the ability. But it does not do damage particularly fast, and it does not deal a crazy amount of damage either. Second is Strike Rocket, which is it was surprising. I tried using it. I had heard some good things about it from other people, and I tried using it. It's pretty good actually. But again, it is Strike Rocket, and it's basically the same as Helix Drag. You got to be careful when you're using it. It's very much a sometimes thing. It's friggin' eating at McDonald's or whatever. It's you can't be doing it all the time. Last honorable mention, just above Strike Rocket, I would say, is Pod Gun. I don't have any great footage of it, but I was doing pretty good with it against bots anyway. Able to keep up with, some of the more meta builds with the pod guns. I'm definitely interested in trying this in more PvP matches. I haven't really had the chance to record a lot of PvP matches with Dreadnought, unfortunately. So with those out of the way, let's get into the top 5. I feel the need to put a disclaimer, this is just my opinion. This is my opinion after relatively limited experience as well, because it's still a rather new mech. But with the experience I do have, these are the things that have, definitively been working better for me. So number 5 is Cryo Launcher, which you would think is kind of weird that Nade Launcher is not above Cryo Launcher, because usually I used to rank Nade Launcher above Cryo Launcher all the time. I think it has better average DPS, and it's basically the same weapon. And Cryo Launcher has the burst thing, which means you can't manage your ammo quite so much. But actually the burst thing helps get your damage out faster, and the stasis is super useful. Especially when people are up close, you can kind of turn, make it so that they aren't able to continue hitting you. It's very nice. I found it to be very effective. Obviously not the most effective, but very effective nonetheless. Number 4 is Revoker. Now, nobody's surprised to see Revoker in the top 5. You might be surprised to see it in number 4 as opposed to higher up, but I would say the biggest downside of this is the range. You have the best DPS out of any weapon, obviously. So if anyone does get, when you do get close, you stun them with the ability, you absolutely tear them apart with the Revokers. But you gotta get close first, or they gotta get close. Sometimes not a big deal, but other times it kind of is. And Dreadnought does not have protection or stealth or any type of insane speed, which makes it a little bit situational. In number 3 is Overdriver. Overdriver is almost the same as Revoker. It's got a bit less DPS. It has almost constant uptime. You don't really have to worry about reload. You do a little bit. You gotta worry about it burning out. But, you know, as long as you're not wasting ammo on stuff, usually fine. But the benefit is that you have much higher range. It's important to have good DPS to be able to kill people when they're EMP'd after you use the ability on them, obviously. And Revoker has the best DPS, but you don't need the best DPS, you just need adequate DPS. Enough to kill somebody in 2 seconds after you hit them with a bunch of those EMP rockets. And Overdriver can indeed do the job most of the time. Alright, so top 2. Number 2 is Minigun, which is basically just... It's basically the same as Overdriver. Technically, Overdriver has better DPS, but that's only when you build up the burnout to some reasonable extent, as well as the fact that, you know, after a bit you have to start feathering the weapon to make sure that you don't burn it out. Minigun is much simpler in that regard. You just hold the trigger, you got insane DPS, and then when you need to reload, you just back up. You don't engage anybody, you don't push, you don't do anything crazy like that. You just give yourself some time to reload. It's a long reload time, but most of the time you can manage it so long as you don't do anything stupid. But again, good range. The bullet spread of the minigun does reduce your damage at range, whereas Overdriver doesn't really have damage drop at range, but the bullet spread actually helps you hit targets at further ranges, whereas Overdriver is very difficult to actually keep damage on targets that are further away. This is why, even though Overdriver technically has better DPS, you rarely see anybody using it in like competitive matches. You will see people using Minigun, but you won't see people using Overdriver. And yeah, that is mostly the reason. Anyway, at number 1, nobody is surprised, Stormwrack. Pretty much the perfect weapon. High burst damage, basically guaranteed kill during those 2 seconds of EMP, so long as you have your magazine ready, which, you know, if you have the legendary reload implant like you probably should, then it's not a big deal. 5.5 seconds of reload time. You'll be fine, more or less coincides with your ability cooldown. And so, yeah, that is going to be the top 5 weapons for Dreadnought. Like I said, you know, regardless of what you're using, it's important to have good damage output. But most importantly, I would say, you really just have to make sure that you're not wasting the ability. Like, pretty much during this entire recording session, I was getting absolutely harassed by Seeker bots. And when that's happening, you have to be, like, hyper conscious about when you're using the ability, who you're using it on, and whether or not you need to save it for, let's say, a Seeker that teleports onto you. You need to be able to turn around and EMP it, otherwise it'll kill you. So it's important to manage your ability uses in that way. Luckily, the cooldown time of Dreadnought is very short, all things considered. And the last thing I'm going to say is something that I learned when I first got Dreadnought, when I maxed it out on stream a while back, and that is that the kill perk of the ability, where it instantly resets if you kill them with the ability, is a complete ruse. It is a red herring. Like, you might be tempted to try to work an enemy's HP down with your weapons and then fire the ability so that you kill them with the ability, and then you can chain that ability on to the next guy over and over and over again. But it's not worth it. You take too much damage that way because you're saving the EMP until last when it doesn't matter. What's important is the EMP, for however short it might be. That gives you time to deal good amounts of damage. You deal the full damage with the ability as opposed to, potentially having some of it go to waste, and you get to deal basically free damage to the enemy for a little while, which does result in you taking less damage. So keep that in mind. A few other facts probably worth knowing if you're thinking of getting this mech, or if you already have it, is that your base ability range is 33 meters. So that's always important to know. And also, your EMP time is 2 seconds, which is not extendable with an ability duration implant. You also can't use the arbitrary ability damage implant, like you need the mech specific one. So you can't extend the EMP time whatsoever, and you need the mech specific ability damage in order to deal more damage with the ability. I'm not sure if that's a bug or not, but that is the way that it is currently. So yeah, once again, apologies for the delay. I kind of needed a break, I'm not gonna lie. But otherwise, that will be it for me. Appreciate y'all. Take care.